The history of the American War, the revolution that changed the world. Imagine a world where one of today's most powerful nations never existed, a world where 13 struggling colonies remained under the shadow of an empire that stretched across continents. But in 1775, a spark lit the fuse of a conflict that changed the world forever. A war fought not just with muskets and cannons, but with ideas of liberty, self-rule, and the possibility of a new nation. This is the story of the American War, the Revolutionary War, the fight for independence that reshaped global history and gave birth to the United States of America. The roots of revolution. To understand the American War, we must travel back to the mid-1700s. The British Empire had just won the 7 Years' War, gaining territory but losing money. To recover from the massive debt, Britain turned to its colonies, the American colonies, demanding new taxes on everyday goods. The Stamp Act, the Sugar Act, the Townshend Acts, and later the Tea Act, each one tightened Britain's grip. But in a land thousands of miles away, these taxes felt like chains. The colonists had no representatives in Parliament, yet were being forced to pay. And so came the cry that echoed across taverns, newspaper, and protests: no taxation without representation. Tensions exploded in 1770 with the Boston Massacre, when a confrontation between citizens and British soldiers left several colonists dead. Trust shattered. The final blow came in 1773 with the Boston Tea Party, where furious colonists dumped British tea into the harbor. What began as protests was turning into rebellion. Britain responded with the Intolerable Acts, harsh punishments meant to crush any resistance. Instead, colonial leaders united, forming the First Continental Congress. What began as political frustration was now becoming a movement, a revolution in the making, the beginning of the war. On April 19, 1775, the first shots were fired at Lexington and Concord in Massachusetts. No one knows who pulled the trigger, but the moment the smoke cleared, it was clear the world had changed. Ordinary farmers and townsmen, the Minutemen, stood against British troops. The American War had officially begun. George Washington, a respected Virginian, was chosen to lead the Continental Army. With little training, few supplies, and no navy, the odds were stacked heavily against the colonies. Britain had one of the strongest military forces in the world, but the Americans had something far more powerful: a belief in freedom. Declaration of Independence. By 1776, the conflict was no longer just a rebellion. It was a fight for complete independence. On July 4, 1776, delegates of the Second Continental Congress approved the Declaration of Independence, authored by Thomas Jefferson. It boldly declared that all men were created equal and had rights that no king could take away. With these words, the colonies transformed into the United States of America, and the war transformed into a battle for a brand new nation. The Revolutionary War tested the limits of the young nation. The American Army suffered defeats in New York and Philadelphia. Soldiers froze and starved during the bitter winter at Valley Forge, where Washington's leadership held the army together. Yet even in hardship, hope surged. In 1777, the Americans won a major victory at Saratoga, convincing France to join the war as an ally. With French ships, soldiers, and supplies, the balance began to shift. Across the colonies, the war raged on, from the forests of the north to the swamps of the south. African Americans, Native Americans, and women all played vital roles, shaping the war in ways often left out of history books. The final victory. By 1781, the British military was stretched thin. General Cornwallis moved his troops to Yorktown, Virginia, a decision that proved fatal. American forces on land and the French Navy at sea trapped the British Army. After weeks of siege, Cornwallis surrendered on October 19, 1781. The war was over. In 1783, the Treaty of Paris officially recognized the independence of the United States. A new nation had emerged, fragile, uncertain, but free. The American War was more than a conflict between colonies and a king. It was a revolution of ideas, a challenge to monarchies, empires, and traditions that shaped the centuries to come. It inspired movements for freedom across the world. It proved that ordinary people could rise up, demand their rights, and build something entirely new. From a handful of colonies on the Atlantic coast, the United States would grow into one of the most influential nations in history. But it all began with a spark, a protest, and a belief that freedom was worth fighting for. This is the story of the American War, the revolution that changed the world. Did you learn something today? If you do, hit that subscribe button for more powerful histories. See you in the next one.